President Trump launching into a blistering attack on fired FBI Director James Comey today, claiming today it was his idea to boot Comey all along.
That's right. His new claims fly right in the face of the administration's spin on Comey's ouster just yesterday.
KCAL 9 political reporter Bryan joins us with more on the president in his own words on the defense.
Absolutely. The president joining the debate. There were charges and countercharges coming from every direction again today. Well, the president called former FBI Director James Comey a grandstander and a showboat. But he says it was his inability to inadequately lead the FBI that led to Comey's firing. And for the first time, President Trump talked about what else was on his mind when he decided to fire Comey.
In an interview Thursday with NBC News, President Trump acknowledged for the first time that when he decided to fire FBI Director James Comey, he was thinking about the impact it might have on the FBI investigation of Russian meddling in the U.S. election.
Regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey, knowing there was no good time to do it. And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse by the Democrats for having lost an election that they should have won. And
Trump's acknowledgement that he was thinking about the investigation into Russian meddling undercuts 2 days of denial that the Russian probe, which was being overseen by Comey, had anything to do with his firing. Rather, his vice president and others said it was the result of reports to him from Attorney General Jeff Sessions and the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein.
Because of the actions that the Deputy Attorney General outlined to the president, to act on the recommendation of the Deputy Attorney General.
The president took the advice of the Deputy Attorney General who oversees the director of the FBI.
And at the White House Thursday, Deputy White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders tried to explain President Trump's dismissive remarks about the Russia investigation.
One of the reasons that the hoax component is the collusion component that has been the false narrative that you guys have been pushing for the better part of a year.
Trump also fired off another tweet on the subject. Russia must be laughing up their sleeves, watching as the U.S. tears itself apart over a Democrat excuse for losing the election. But on the same day, the president told NBC News anchor Lester Holt this about the Russian meddling investigation.
I want to get to the bottom. If Russia hacked, if Russia did anything having to do with our election, I want to know about it.
However, Burbank Congressman Adam Schiff says you don't have to be a detective to figure out that the firing of James Comey had everything to do with the Russia investigation.
The reality is this has everything to do with the Russia investigation and the president's discomfort with Comey leading that investigation or Comey not paying enough attention to the real story because he considers the Russia investigation to be a fake.
President Trump also said he was reassured 3 times by Comey that he, Trump, was not a target of that investigation.
I actually asked him, yes. I said, if it's possible, would you let me know, am I under investigation? He said, you are not under investigation.
We consider it to be a highly significant investigation.
Comey's temporary replacement, acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe, only 2 days on the job, told the Senate Intelligence Committee that the Russia investigation is a top priority for the agency. And he mounted a spirited defense of Director Comey, already splitting with the White House.
You cannot stop the men and women of the FBI from doing the right thing.
Is it accurate that the rank and file no longer supported Director Comey?
No, sir, that is not accurate. I hold Director Comey in the absolute highest regard. I can tell you also that Director Comey enjoyed broad support within the FBI.
Now the debate in Congress is over whether they should support a special independent prosecutor to take over the Russia investigation.
We need the support of Republican members of Congress.
Every time we have any controversy around here, they want to call for a special prosecutor. We have a Justice Department that's very capable.
Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein will make the call on that, and he made a brief appearance at the Capitol to talk with the leaders of the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Did Mr. Rosenstein confirm that he threatened to quit over the handling of the Comey firing, and did you ask him about that?
We didn't ask him about it. He didn't share it with us.
And now Senator Kamala Harris, former California Attorney General, is calling on the U.S. Attorney General to quit his job.
I think Jeff Sessions should resign.
Resign, not even recuse himself.
Yes, I think he should resign.
Why?
That he would sign off on firing the person who's investigating the case he's recused from.
Now, here's a different idea for where to go next with this. Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee tonight tweeted that instead of appointing an independent special prosecutor to lead the Russian meddling investigation, President Trump should nominate Judge Merrick Garland to become the new director of the FBI. Garland, you may remember, was nominated last year by President Obama to fill the empty Scalia seat on the Supreme Court. But Republicans would never even allow the nomination to get to a hearing. How about that, Lena?
Yeah. All right, Dave. Thank you.